Welcome back to the third session. I'm Gianluca Fiorelli, and today we are going to have a guest directly from Los Angeles, USA. She is the director of Rue Labs at Rickety Rue, and she leads, and we are going to talk also about this, experimental SEO testing with the purpose to bridge the gap between traditional search rankings and real-world user behavior. In this sense, she is one of the best-known specialists in the so-called search experience optimization, SXO, and local SEO. Our guest is a frequent speaker at events like Brighton SEO in San Diego, and she is also a contributor to Search Engine Land, and a very nice discovery for me in the sense that I started to follow her relatively recently. And I was really impressed. Surely you know her because she is Celeste Gonzalez. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine. It's for me the end of the day, for you the start of the day. But I'm fine. And what about classic question that I ask to all my guests? How SEO is treating you in this
No,
last week?
it has been treating me pretty well. I'm very excited with the changes happening with, I'm just on the local side, seeing all the Ask Maps information that everyone's sharing, getting to talk about that with clients, lots of education there. It's been exciting, not boring.
Cool. You immediately introduce a good topic that I wanted to talk with you, which is the I search side of local search. So also Ask Maps. In the really beginning, local search was somehow safe from things like AI overview, AI mode, but also from LLMs like ChatGPT. And things have changed.
Mhm.
How are you seeing the introduction of AI in this niche like local SEO, which, I mean, for many things, really needs to be grounded to the reality. And we know that sometimes AI has this tendency of not really be faithful to the grounded sources. How are you seeing this
Yeah.
evolution?
So just starting, it's saying that it's not always accurate on the Ask Map side of things. It's been, fun diving in and seeing where the issues can happen. Specifically, Ask Maps about this place. So when you go on Google Maps and you can click on a specific place, let's say a restaurant, dentist, home service provider that has a physical location, you can prompt it and ask some questions. And sometimes, if there's not enough information there, it will say, I don't have enough information to answer this question, which is great. That's what you'd like to see, but it's unfortunately not always the case. And sometimes it can pull in information that's not correct if you do have a similar business name. So what I've seen is that it'll even pull in Instagram or Facebook. It'll show the sources that it's using and it can show them for other businesses if that information is missing from yours and they happen to have a similar business name. So I think it's really an exciting time because it's forcing more small businesses and just local businesses to think more about the user and think about these things that they can run into and try to get them to work a little harder on their website and making sure information is there or on their GBP, kind of helping them understand that they have to put in some level of effort there on the small business side.
Yes, and from what you were saying, that AI can eventually pull up sources like Instagram or so, social media. That means that the attention, the omnichannel nature of marketing that is so popular right now is also becoming fundamental also for small businesses, or not necessarily only small business, because we get local is so pervasive. Big enterprise companies can obviously have a strong local business facets in their digital presence. Let's think, I don't know, Walmart, Zara, all these big companies. So one of the things that you were also talking, you had a good definition, which is the LLM blind spot. So, which maybe is also related to this. Correct me if I'm wrong. And do the important always has been considered that reviews are very important for local search. Are they gaining even more importance now for LLMs?
I definitely believe so. Just so aside from the LLMs, just with, let's say, the Ask Maps updates, that's like the biggest thing that local SEOs are talking about right now. And just with Ask Maps about this place, it appears to me that the first place this feature is pulling from are the reviews, and it is pulling the sentiment, and it is pulling the text from them. So when you look at it, it'll say no before you go. And it could be a dentist, and it could be like, oh, they make you feel very comfortable. That's not something anybody was optimizing for. People weren't specifically doing comfortable dentist or dentist that sends a birthday card or a phone call. Nobody's optimizing for those types of keywords. That was not a thing. But it's what's getting pulled because it's what that AI feature believes would be a standout point or a unique selling point to people. And it believes that that might be what's important to them. So a dentist making them feel very comfortable, that's something that's in the know before you go. And that's pulled into sort of the reviews, with the questions that are being shown on Ask Maps about this place. They will be like, do they offer massage chairs? Let's just say it's a dentist, or do they offer anything to help you feel more comfortable? And the first place that you see underneath, once you click into that question, are the reviews. And yes, they mention massage chairs, or they made me feel very comfortable and talked to me through this procedure. It's picking up the sentiment and the exact words that are being used there. So seeing it in those AI related features, it's given to a more broader conversation of sentiment in general for LLMs, and thinking about it just even for other verticals and industries, and how, let's say you are mentioned or there is something said about your business, but what is being said is more important. You can run all these prompts and see, okay, there's mentions here, but what is being mentioned? What is being mentioned about your brand? What is being mentioned about the other brands? Which one would you decide to choose based on these mentions? Like what is unique selling points being put here? What are the things maybe you don't like that they're pulling in? And that can be from your reviews. Everything's fair game.
So, in other words, this is the reviews are used by, in this case, Gemini, because Gemini is feeding Google Maps, also to find the things that makes a local business unique in certain time. Plus, it's giving, from what I understood from what you were saying, when you were talking about the sentiment can be the, the equivalent of trust. In the sense, if the sentiment is positive, then that means that the person reviewing is with this positive sentiment also trust the small brand over brand in local search. But anyway, wasn't sentiment already somehow a ranking factor used by Google Maps also in the past? Because I remember quite many years ago that there was this complaint from local search marketers that local business with awful review, very well optimized, were outranking businesses with very good review, but less optimized for other local ranking factors. So I remember that Google started to use sentiment as a way to discriminate and price good small businesses versus bad small businesses. So it's somehow an evolution of this.
Yes, I believe it's just become more important at this point. And, previously talked about, it was more on the quantitative side of the data. So, like you said, the amount of reviews, the optimization, and more just, okay, here are more positive reviews, or this star rating is higher. And obviously, people were taking into consideration the review text, and they're like, get keywords in the reviews. But now it's not just that anymore. It has evolved to more, and mentioning those unique selling points, like you've said, the things that make that local business stand out or different from their competitors.
Interesting. And so that my further question would be this. Our reviews have some sort of, as in the news niche, as some sort of freshness value or not? And secondly, related to this, how much important is becoming governance in this case? Because a characteristic, when it was just the classic templates, we were used to say, if it's on the second page, nobody sees it. The problem is that with LLMs in general, so included Gemini, even the oldest, weirdest, more negative things that you in classic search were able to hide can surface again. So somehow two questions maybe are related, maybe not. So there is a so freshness between in the consideration of a sentiment or not. And what about if the sentiment was bad in the past and positive now? So an evolution.
So I believe it's all relevant. Everything is fair game. And with the freshness aspect of it, so based on my personal experience and what I've done with my clients and what I've seen, freshness is a good thing. Like it is something that you want. It is nice to just sort of track how things change over time. With that, with their results visibility. So I created a Chrome extension to track and pull sentiment from GBP reviews. One of the things that is part of it is review velocity. So you can see how often those are coming in. And that way you have a way to track and you're able to see how sentiment can change over time and what those things could change. The know before you go or the answers that are being given in those ask maps about displaced questions. It's all stuff that, you want to have some historical data to work with and to be tracking. I believe that it can be changed though. And brands, just because there were negative things in the past, I don't think it means you give up or it's over. That if you do the work to change the things that people were originally complaining about or being proactive about certain things, that it is possible to gain some ground there and work your way back up.
Interesting. And I know you created, you vibe coded this Chrome extension. I will go to the vibe coding topic a little later. But before I want to just move a little bit from the Google Maps to LLMs, let's talk about ChatGPT because it's the most used in a mainstream population. I wanted to know from a professional who is working on local search, how would you grade ChatGPT in terms of local search?
It's okay. I wouldn't say it's my favorite. I will say just at least since it is what is mainly adopted by the regular person, that's where we see the bulk of referrals coming from on the local side. So when we are tracking that for different businesses, home services, catering, photography, dental, medical, anything like that, the bulk of the referrals are coming in from ChatGPT. So it's there, it's happening, it's rising. When I am trying this out as a user, I wouldn't say it is the best. I test it out just to see, like, okay, I'm going to be traveling to this place. Let me see what types of recommendations. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's necessarily better than Gemini when it comes to recommendations at this point, and just in how I've been testing and using it in my own experiences.
Yes, I agree with your experience personally. And eventually, I don't know if I would use for information, very specific information about local business on ChatGPT. Maybe because Gemini is Google, I would probably use more Gemini, and also because it's not really clear from where ChatGPT pull ups the information, especially. Surely, I would be quite skeptical in searching things like phone numbers, contact in ChatGPT about the business because the grade of hallucination, at least when I try, is quite big still. We don't know. Is it using really Bing or is scraping Google through other means? Somehow, as when it's presenting products, we everything is making us suspect that it's still using the Google merchant feed when actually it could use the Bing merchant feed. And let's talk about search experience optimization. I think it's a great thing. It's a vertical, but it really, if we think about the messy middle, we usually think about trigger and then phase between exploration and consideration. But there is another phase, which is the experience, which is when people land on the website. And search experience optimization is exactly that, how to optimize the experience. So how to make that, considering now that the clicks, the traffic is harder to obtain, how to obtain the best from those clicks. So how would you explain to a classic SEO what exactly is search experience optimization, SXO?
I believe that using experience versus engine makes it all more encompassing of what we should be striving to do and what a lot of people have been talking about that they are focusing on now. So, we talk about, let's say you get the click. Old school SEO reporting was just, okay, clicks are there, done. And the job is not done there because the reporting should not just be based on clicks and it should be based on ROI and what you are able to drive from that traffic that you're able to bring in. And what that does mean is considering the experience you are offering the user on the website. And that includes reviewing how they interact with it through session recordings, looking at heat maps, scroll depth. I am not against bounce rate. I know that was something that was like really hammered into before. But the other side of the experience part is that, yes, focusing on the website and focusing on the user behavior data that we have access to now, as we still have users, on the website at this point in time. But considering the other experiences, so, lots of people are talking about YouTube now. LLMs are citing YouTube way more. People are talking about Reddit. It's different places that people are searching. There's different experiences. And it considers those as well, because not every single time it's cut and dry. You go to Google, you look something up, you go to the website, you make a purchase. There's lots of other touch points and other experiences that are to be considered in this as well.
So in this sense, it's could be considered a new vision of SEO somehow, or a specific vision of SEO. And it's could be compared to another definition of SEO that it became quite popular recently, which is the search everywhere. So mostly because you were saying, okay, the experience can be also in the search. So making your brand so pervasive and visible everywhere. And that is everywhere presence should match with, for instance, a, a YouTube video can be watched directly on the server. So you should think also to create a YouTube video in a way that is offering a good experience, even if it's on the server. So yeah, I know that can be, for certain people, can be quite difficult to understand, but it's the same fact that the container is different from classic YouTube or from a television, as it happens to be more common to be seen, to be watched YouTube. You have to consider of this kind of influence from the container on your content. And another way that when I talk about experience, because I also was talking about experience optimization many, many years ago, when I try to convince, especially if I collaborate with, I'm a consultant, I collaborate with in-house SEO, is try to match the concept of experience in the way that you also are describing with things that Google is also already telling us. For instance, it's not the case that everything like speed, everything like all these security implication of a website are put under page experience in Google Search Console. But also things like very technical terms came out 2 years from now, which like a long click, good click, bad click, all from this NABoost and the DOJ process are substantially pointing to the direction of experience. So I think this is my little trick to make the search experience So combining the collaboration also of UX, and not only UX, also conversion rate optimization, because we can also try to match these kind of things. A good way for making SEO to understand the concept. How do you do it when you are working with clients to make understand, to make the little jump from classic being visible, obtain clicks, convert, okay, let's do these things on our website in order to make these click counts.
So I am fortunate, I guess, that with local, clients specifically always ask about like, well, what's my ROI? What's my return on this? Or, you know, I'm spending, this much per month. How do I know what I'm going to get back? Those conversations are pretty top of mind in local. And it's especially with small businesses too, because this is whatever their budget may be, like it could be the only thing that they're spending on for marketing, or it could be like maybe they've been burned before by previous agencies. So they have a lot more questions about this. So on the client side, I'd say it is kind of always top of mind on what are they going to get back aside from clicks. And, like, okay, clicks, cool, but what's going into my pocket? And having that sort of be centered in their mind for these conversations, it is an easier sell to get them to consider user experience and like page layout updates and things like that that are a little bit different from traditional SEO. I like to just pull up. I use Microsoft Clarity. I'm an ambassador for them, but you can use, whatever tool that you have at your disposal, Hotjar, Crazy Egg, whatever it is. Show them the session recordings. Show them where the frustration is. Obviously, there are frustration metrics like rage clicks, dead clicks, excessive scrolling, or, even just on the scrolled up side of things, you can also show them that people are not scrolling on their pages. And hey, this information that like maybe this piece of content that you had worked so hard on or previous agency worked so hard on, whatever it is, nobody's rating it. Nobody's interacting with that. Or all your buttons, local find some things are pretty simple. You only have one CTA button all the way at the bottom of the page. Nobody's making it there. Going through and just showing them where frustration might be happening in those session recordings or on those heat maps is very helpful and it's really telling, and they're able to actually see what you're talking about and it becomes more than just a concept because you're able to bring them actual proof to get them to then decide what they want to do about it.
Interesting. A very silly question. So you were talking about the, it's fun because of this sentiment and psychological nature of traffic and experiences coming out again. We talked about it before for the reviews, and now we're talking about the clicks and metrics. Can you explain just very quickly to somebody that is not so used to these kind of terms in order to avoid some sort of misunderstanding, which is the worst thing in SEO? What is a rage click and what is the difference between a rage click and a dead click and a quick back?
Yes. So with the rage clicks, I'm sure we've all sort of experienced doing them. You can be on your phone scrolling through something and you're clicking on a button, not getting a response, and you keep clicking it like 10 more times. Hello, please respond to me. That counts as a rage click. The dead clicks might have been that first click in that interaction. So you went and clicked on the button and nothing happened. And let's just say you were waiting, like, okay, is it gonna load? Is it not gonna load? You're just kind of stuck there. That's typically counted as the dead click. I will say, with some of these things, especially on mobile, sometimes there are certain clicks that are counted as dead clicks that are not actually, because as you know, you scroll through your phone and sometimes when you are scrolling, you accidentally tap instead of going to scroll. So sometimes you can see that in dead click behavior. But yes, so I just wanted to preface it with that as well. And then with the quick backs, it could be, you do the accidental tap on something and it sends you to one page. You're like, well, that's not where I wanted to go. So you click to go back to the page before. So that can be the case, or you end up landing on a page and you're like, this is not what I expected or not what I was looking for. I'm going to go back. And if it happens a very fast amount of time, it gets counted as a click back.
Okay, I understand. Yes, when you were describing them, I was showing in my mind all the all the example I can report to my own experience. For just an anecdote, it's regarding it's a mix of both of
Mhm.
everything. It's both a rage click, a dead click, and a quick back sentiment. I have, for instance, when you are reading a news from Discover
Oh
on
my
your
gosh.
mobile,
Yes.
and all of a sudden you are scrolling, and when you are scrolling, swiping down, you tap by mistake a Temo advertisement, and you are moved to a new Windows on your Google Apps or Chrome app and on Temo. So you have to quit it, return back to the. Yes, it can be very frustrating. And considering also your work in the labs, when you were dealing with these metrics, what kind of correlation did you see between negative metrics like rage click, dead clicks, and quickbacks and losing visibility?
So I will say that in a so one thing that has been tested and talked about from time to time, kind of exhausting in a way, are those accordions. And in my experience with testing, remove it. Lots of times there can be dead clicks on the accordions and they click on it, but they didn't click on it in the right way. So the accordion didn't open. So I'll see that happen in session recordings. Or you're making it hard for them. You're making them work to get the information. People don't want to work to get the information, especially when you do have things like ChatGPT now, like where people are like, why don't I have to go to the website or AI overview? I don't have to go to the website. My answer is right there. Having the accordion up, you're making them work to then click. They already clicked into your website. Now they have to click into an accordion to see the information, to get their questions answered. And in my testing, when we have removed the accordions, we did see visibility improve. And that was in terms of rankings. And it also just, because rankings improved, clicks had improved as well. And that wasn't necessarily the goal of the testing in the beginning. We just did want to see how, what would happen if we removed them and we removed some of that frustration to get people to have the information to then make a decision on what they wanted to do next, but it did help visibility as well.
Interesting, interesting. I think maybe there are also other implications more related to how Google eventually weight the content hidden in an accordion or not and in place. And you will maybe will think that it's a weird question, but in all the things session you have watched, what is the weirdest thing that you saw returning from people experiencing a website that neither you were thinking could happen?
Hmm. No, it's a good question. It's not a weird question. Ooh, just thinking. I mean, I've seen some very weird sessions where I'm like, like their phone might have just been in their bag or in their pocket while they were visiting a website because of how it scrolled and jumped and clicked weirdly. And then it would just be like dead for a while, no movement, but they're still on the page. And then all of a sudden it's like, boom, exit. So there definitely been some strange recordings where it's like, whoa, these metrics just do not look great. And it ends up being the case where it just seems like they were not actively on their phone, but it might have just like accidentally touched something in their pocket, touched something in their bag. You see it. And obviously, you can have a client be like, whoa, what's going on here? What happened? I'd say that those have been pretty weird sessions to watch because, at first it might seem like, oh, okay, there's a user here. And sometimes like maybe not be. Um, hmm. I'm trying to
Have
think
you
of
ever
anything.
another question that can be somehow related to this? It's very weird experience in the session recorded. Can happen to record something which is not really human doing the session, but a bot.
It definitely so from my experience in reviewing, I definitely say that there are sessions that look like bots and not humans.
Eh, And now you can, at least from your experience, also maybe simply how can you say, as if when you are comparing one real photograph to an made up AI generated photograph? Usually we are going looking to the ends because AI still has
Mhm.
problem with hands and fingers. How did you start to recognize eventually that this session is not from a human, but from a bot. Did you
Yeah.
found some kind of patterns?
It seems so. I don't think there's any such thing as a perfect session when it's a human. And that's like sort of the experience I talked about. You're scrolling on your phone and you accidentally tap, and maybe there wasn't anything to tap, it was just text, but it'll get counted as a dead click. You accidentally tapped when you were just trying to continue to scroll. There's lots of imperfect behaviors that happen in human sessions and stuff that looks like bot sessions just are like too good to be true. Where go through, scroll perfectly fine, click on the next page. And it's like, okay, yeah, sure, there's some efficient people who can do that. Definitely. But when things seem too perfect, that's when you can kind of just be like, I'm going to side eye and watch this. Now on Microsoft Clarity, they do have a feature where it's a split where you can see bot traffic too. So that's a newer feature. I haven't dived into it too much, but it is something that you can also consider looking into as you dive into your own data.
Interesting. I want to move a little bit to another topic, which is somehow we already touched it when we were talking about recording, you were talking about the test. And actually, you, from what I've read, you do a lot of tests and you plan a lot of tests also for your client. So I've talked about SEO testing very recently with Ryan Jones, but until recently was working at SEO
Yeah.
testing. And but what about you? What is your process when designing an SEO test?
Yeah. Well, I absolutely love Ryan Jones' work and I love SEOtesting.com. Like we use that tool at Rethinking as well to help run our tests and like see our data before and after, split tests, all of that. So great tool. So when it comes to coming up with hypotheses and sort of just ideas for testing, since this is like my department, I do monthly data reviews for our clients. And I like to dive in and see what's going on in Search Console. I see what's going on with their GPP data. If we're going to do some like sort of GPP testing and looking into their user behavior data. So it always starts there, or it could start with a question from the client. So I do manage some clients as well. And, and having conversations with them, they're like, well, what about, this? Or could we try something like this? Or can you look at this page for me? And some of the other AMs on our team, like Amy Durenka, like she will be like, hey, can you take a look at this? Blake will be like, hey, take a look at this. And it can just start there. A simple question to look at a specific page, or me just looking into the data on my own and coming to some sort of hypothesis. I like to look at it holistically. So that's where it's not just, the Search Console data. That's where I am looking into the Clarity data. I like to see what's going on with the people who did end up on the page. If we are doing GPP testing, I like to look at Whitespark, Right Local, the insights that we do have just in our custom reports. It always starts with the data. And then testing ideas, as far as that goes, nothing has to be too crazy. It's seeing just test results, studies from SEOtesting.com or even like Search Pilot. It can be very simple things like title tag testing. It can be H1 testing and seeing how important that can be, doing that, instead of a title tag test this time. Yeah, I mean, really like not counting out any of the simple things like that when it comes to it. And if we are just looking at it from purely a user behavior standpoint or perspective, then that's where we get to be more creative and consider, if we were someone considering these services and stuff, what would we want to see when we land on this page? And looking at some of the above the fold stuff. And like when you had talked about patents earlier, actually, when I was doing my presentations on search experience optimization and testing, there's one that I found that Google places a lot more importance on the above the fold content on mobile. And that's been something that we test quite a bit.
Yeah, yes, and someone coming not from the developer world, but from humanistic studies world. I think it's logic because usually we forget what Google wants to do, which is Google ideally wants to think and do as a human being. And actually, as a Western human being, because, yeah, that's why Google has problems with and not Western languages. As an SEO, international SEO, I know this very well. But so the classic is the most important thing is things that are on the left and above instead of on the right and below. It's something that always has been so in everywhere when was working in television. Why the logo of a channel is always down on the right? Because it's a blind spot. Nobody looks at there. So basic should be also so for reading, so for scanning content. And the above all surely is important, especially with the complication of a mobile design, which happens also with small business, but business of every kind, where the above all usually is squatted substantially by super big hero image. Very, I mean, maybe great in terms of branding and value proposition and whatsoever marketing in general kind of messaging, but not so important for the purpose of positioning and rankings and visibility. So you are substantially telling me that you are doing SEO, but in the test, but in the terms of search experience optimization test. So this is to be clear. And
Yes.
it's interesting. And did you find also that this kind of SXO test, let's call it so, also had as a byproduct an improvement in conversion rate for it, or a sort of collision of compenetration with classic zero A/B testing.
Yeah, I'd say it definitely intersects, and it is something that we do look at and try to report on for certain tests as well. And I mean, if you're making the user experience better on, let's say, a service page or a product page, you're likely going to get them to want to fill out the form or, click on that CTA, click add to cart, whatever it is. So it does, by helping someone get to where they want to be faster, they'll likely get to that conversion faster. So it is something, to report on and to look at.
Interesting. And we are talking about experience, but I'm thinking also because one of my clients is essentially a local business, even if it has a presence nationwide in the US, but it's really, really deeply local with
Mhm.
local stores and so on. And it's a long time now that I'm really seeing the importance of the connection between everything we are trying to do with the digital presence of a client to be somehow aligned with all the classic offline,
Mhm.
offsite, non-digital, let's call it analogical in-store experience. How much of your work is also talking about this offline experience, this analogical experience? So to not create this sort of uncanny valley between what's happening online and what you are
Yeah.
proposing online and what's happening offline on the
Yeah.
store, in the store.
So I'd say I do get to focus on that a lot more in my freelance work that I do. But at review, or I feel like just with any sort of local businesses, it does show up in your reviews on what the offline experience was, or sort of the customer service, like surveys and feedback that you're getting, based on however they were treated on the phone call or when they visited the restaurant or cafe, when they reached out for a quote. So those offline experiences can impact online experiences when people do leave reviews or when people leave comments on social media. So there are ways that you're able to monitor it online with that. And then also just getting the survey data, call logs, things like that to be able to look at some of that offline stuff. And it's a little hard on the SEO side to be able to say like, "Hey, it's a tough conversation, but, people are complaining about customer service. Something, should be done about that because now it can impact your reviews and that can impact your visibility." They're tough conversations to have because it's like, how much of this do we own? But at the end of the day, if it can show up in reviews, if it can show up in social media comments, it's something to bring to a client.
Totally, totally. And Talking about social media, you also touched recently, let's say, the area of short video, especially specifically TikTok. And this is something that when I was reading your notes about this, yes, this is something that I'm noticing too, especially not only because already a few years ago, the former head of search of Google was alerting that especially young generation were using Instagram. In this case, he was talking especially of Instagram. It can be obviously also TikTok for performing local searches. But creating a video strategy, even if it's a short strategy, because the things that I see, the reels that really are prized by TikTok or by Instagram are not really easy to produce with. Even if the business is so small, like a single tour operator or tour guide, they are very complex video. It at least demands someone operating a camera or someone operating a very good smartphone if they are using a smartphone. So, first question, will you be able to quantify the impact of short video on social media in the success of a local business as a whole, also for the website, also for searches in GPP and Google Maps? And second, how do you treat the topic, the necessity of creating a video strategy for businesses like local businesses?
Yeah. In terms of metrics and just any sort of measurement of impact there, it's correlative with search because, we can get the metrics from TikTok and they do have their creator search insights. You can go ahead and see them on the actual app. But there are APIs and connectors to be able to get that data, like Metricool, and you can correlate that to your Google Search Console data. And I like doing that and looking at branded queries and putting those along with what the TikTok or YouTube posting schedule looks like and how performance is doing on there. Because let's say you had an exceptional video on TikTok, performed and exceptional. I'm not saying it has to go viral necessarily, but it did really well for your account and for what your metrics are used to. It could impact branded searches at that point. Users see you on TikTok, they decide to go into Google and search up business and see how close or far away are they from me? Should I make a visit? Should I pick up the phone? Whatever it is. So it can impact the branded search in that way. So it is correlative. It's not going to be absolutely because this video went viral. We now know that like everyone is searching for us that is here in this branded queries from Search Console. But it's helpful in seeing that there can be a connection there. And in terms of thinking about video strategy, it always is going to depend on what the client can actually spend time and money doing. Because especially just on the local side, sometimes efforts are spread thin. And if they don't have the time or the resources to invest in video like that and in keeping up with it, then it's not going to be something that we're saying go all in on. Might not be the fit for every single person. I think it's still important. And the way that you can still win it is by just providing really good service because there's lots of user generated content on TikTok as well. And by providing that good in person experience, you can get videos produced about what that is. And you can get people talking on socials about you.
Yeah, yeah. So using user generated content, so spontaneous videos, or maybe not so spontaneous, maybe you are nudging, you can nudge to do a video. And it's clearly a good idea. It's both as a complementary video strategy and maybe your own video strategy if you cannot produce video by yourself. But when you were talking about the correlation, I couldn't but think maybe doing a sort of double depth jump. Cannot we consider the correlation between the visibility that we can have with our shorts on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube? And consider also that this short, there is a special search feature on Google search. And what could be the same kind of brand visibility on LLMs? Because we always are arguing, how can we find a correlation between being very visible in LLMs for our topics, also on a local level, and actual impact on traffic. These sometimes give us a referral, but usually that is not the norm. I mean, usually the traffic is trying to correlate with brand searches. Cannot we find somehow a correlation also, somehow the same methodology that maybe you are using for correlating the impact of short video also as to correlate the same impact, but brand mention on LLMs on AI overview in AI mode could be an idea.
Yes, you can definitely track SERPs, especially, looking on local. You can see TikTok pulled in, you can see YouTube Shorts pulled in, or just YouTube in general pulled in. And it is something you absolutely can be tracking, and it's something you have a little bit more control of and getting to see what that looks like, especially working with agencies. You don't have an in-house social media person. They likely have someone else doing their social media. So it's a lot of collaborating, coordinating. But you can always track the SERP and you can see how that can change over time with those videos popping up. As far as LLMs, let's say ChatGPT mentions TikToks, I'm researched it and looked at just some of the tools that will make the TikTok data available. I haven't seen that there's anything that would show you the referral traffic to your TikTok um, LLMs, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, they are adding AI features into TikTok as well. They have their Ask Taco, and it does cite websites and local businesses in there as well. So you can track the referrals from TikTok too.
Cool, cool, interesting. Let's stop talking about local search, SXO. Let's talk about you. I mean, I have a question for you. Two questions in reality. One is more about profession, let's say. What is the things that you would have loved to be told about when you were starting your career?
Oh, wow. That's, that's a very big question. I think I would, communities were sort of just starting out, like the Women in Tech SEO community.
Yes.
And they were able to make that a very safe space to ask questions. I think, how I joined, I was a blogger. I was just working on my own website, learning about this as much, SEO as much as possible. And I was on Twitter and I was following people and I was very intimidated and I didn't know anyone. I would just follow everyone and just sort of like, but not necessarily engage. If people had made it more comfortable for people to ask questions. I did see sort of like the Twitter back and forth when people shared opinions of things. I feel like the community has gotten a little bit better. I know now we're mainly on LinkedIn or in private Slack channels. Noah Lerner has done a great thing with SEO community. So I think if people were saying like just ask questions, it's not a dumb question. Like we've all had these questions before, or maybe we haven't thought about it. Yeah, having someone from the very beginning say, just jump into the conversation and don't worry about it.
Yes. I have a friend that will always say, don't give a frack about entering into conversation. Yes, because usually the SEO community, apart of few exceptions, is quite welcoming with newer generation. Even if, for instance, it's me and I say, okay, I have to explain for another time, but it's not a problem. It's always better to
Yeah.
explain one more time than not explaining and making things being explained by someone who doesn't know anything. This is my philosophy. And apart from SEO, what does Celeste like to do?
Yes. I really like to strength train. I do a lot of weight training, lifting. I am into bodybuilding. No show date to date, but just working on still building the muscle to be ready to get to stage eventually. And I also really love Legos. So in my free time, I really like building the
Cool.
Lego models.
But you like Lego to build your own stuff with Lego or you have a
I get the
specific?
gifts. I love the botanicals with how beautiful they are. The flowers never die. I have
Oh,
like a
yeah.
couple on my desk right now. Yeah, I like puzzles. I mean, SEO is sort of a puzzle, so I guess it sort of makes sense that one of my other hobbies would just be
Well, it's
puzzles.
another way. Usually, well, I can relate to it. I always, people knows that I like to paint. mini soldier. And I think that doing puzzle and doing Lego is a way to free your mind. I don't know if it's your case, but in my
Mm-hmm.
case, sometimes the best ideas I had happened when I was painting because I was totally not thinking about
Mm-hmm.
work. And so things pop up naturally. I don't know if it's your case.
It definitely helps me clear my mind. So, well, I don't know, I feel more accomplished with it. And then like later in the day, yeah, since I was cleared, more thoughts come to my head, more ideas. But if you're not thinking about it, it does make it easier to just
Yes, totally.
have to run with.
And people are going to be lucky enough to see you talking very soon in some conference.
Yes, yes. So I will be hosting a mastermind session at SMX Advance, but
Cool.
also speaking at the SEO FOMO meetup the day before the conference, which is awesome.
Yes, in Boston. So yes, I saw
Yes.
the announcement by Aleda.
Yes, yeah, that is going to be so exciting. I haven't seen Elena in like 2 years, so very excited to see her again. And then I have Women in Tech Philadelphia in October and Brighton SEO San Diego. I think that's in September.
Mhm. Cool. Well, I mean, as a European, I would have loved to have heard some European conference popping up. Let's see. Let's push for having Celeste also on this side of the pond.
Yes, I hope so. 2027.
Okay, perfect. Celeste, it was a great pleasure to have you as my guest here at the third session.
Thank you so much. This was a great conversation. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you. And thank you also to all of you. Let me do the classic YouTube stuff. Remember to ring on the bell to be notified and obviously to subscribe. And we are going to have other wonderful, great guests here at the third session. Thank you and bye bye.